So hello guys, what's up? So this is me, Kurtzus, and for today's video lecture, we'll be discussing all about the main features of globalization. So actually, this is just a continuation of our first lesson, which is Introduction to Globalization. So we have to define the following features. So these features will now supplement us or give us a better understanding about globalization. So we have four features wherein we have internationalization, liberalization, universalization, and lastly, westernization. First, we go to internationalization. So when we talk about internationalization, guys, take note of the term connection. From our first video lecture, which we define transnationalization and internationalization, from the term inter, reciprocity, mutual, what else? In between, internationalization simply means the connection of two countries. So look at growth of transaction and interdependence between two countries. So an example of internationalization would now be in terms of trade. So Philippines would be trading what? Bananas. And China has abundancy in terms of formalin. Then China needs bananas, Philippines needs formalin, for instance. Example lang naman, no? So China will now trade their formalin to the Philippines, and in return, the Philippines will now trade their bananas to China. So ang tawag natin dyan sa economics is comparative advantage. Kung saan ka abundant, yun yung ibigay mo. At yung kapalit, kung saan ka scarce, kung saan ka nagsushort, hingi ka sa ibang country na abundant, sorry. So doon nagkakaroon ng trade. So that is an example of internationalization. But we just don't look in terms of trade. Another thing would now be in terms of OFWs, yung mga overseas Filipino workers natin. That is an example of internationalization. We send manpower abroad to those people who lack the necessary labor power. For instance, would now be Japan. Kasi sa Japan, di ba, nagkakaroon ng shortage when it comes to their working population. So, they need more laborers. So, one cheap labor, sabihin na natin cheap kasi that is a reality, would now be our Filipino laborers, our overseas. So, mangyari dyan, we'll be sending our overseas Filipino workers, and in return, sasahudan sila ng mga Hapones through payroll, which would now be remitted in our country. So, nagkakaroon ngayon ng trade or transaction. Nagkakaroon ngayon ng connection. So, look here. So, money, merchandise, investments. So, we have foreign investors coming here in the Philippines. That is an example of internationalization. But aside from this following, we also have messages. So, through Facebook, nakaka-communicate na tayo in other countries towards foreigners. So, those are some examples when it comes to internationalization. Remember, internationalization, connection, transaction, between. So that is one feature of globalization. Now, the next would now be liberalization, and this is one common feature of globalization. Now, take note, key terms. Liberalization, the key term that we must remember is open and borderless. So, yung una nating lesson, no, this is quite synonymous with transnationalization, although may difference yan, no. So, when we talk about transnationalization, ang konteksto dyan is across. And if you remember yung discussion din natin yung sa internationalization and transnationalization, your nation states are composed, are protected by this thing called barriers, borders, or boundaries. Now, in liberalization, unting-unting nadidiminish yan, unting-unti nang nawawala. So, we're slowly becoming borderless. So, from reduction to the total removal of our borders. Now, to give you an example, and the best example when we talk about liberalization would be in terms of tariff. Now, to liberalize our world economy, ang nangyayari dyan is alisin natin yung tariff. When we talk about tariff, it simply means the tax imposed in our imported goods. So, nangyayari dyan, madali nang makapasok yung mga imported goods, and that is example of liberalization. So, look, abolish regulatory measures like trade barriers. Wala ng tariff. Foreign exchange restrictions, unting-unti na nawawala. Capital control and visa requirements. And that is one main trend when it comes to visa processes, no? That para makapasok ka sa country na yun, strict yan. There's a barrier, there's a border. Before entering, for instance, United States, you have to pass through to the consul, magkakaroon ng interview. Mahabang proseso yan. Bakit nga ba mahaba yung proseso yan? Because countries are protecting their borders in order to maintain their identity, maintain the norms. Kaya mahirap makapasok yan. But But because of liberalization, ang nangyayari ngayon dyan is slowly nawawala ngayon yung red tape. The term is red tape, yung mahirap na process, and slowly people are free from entering from one nation state to another nation state, and that is one element of liberalization. So yun, no? So nagigets no, unti-unti na nagiging borderless. Ang nangyayari dyan is yung proximity yung nagiging closer. We are becoming closer with one another. So yan yung another essential or another feature all about liberalization. Next is we have universalization. Now, bakit nga ba siya naging feature ng globalization? When we look into universalization, we have the terms worldwide, everywhere, universal. From the term universal, it entails homogenization. We're becoming one standard. There's now becoming, or rather, there is now a standardization when we talk about globalization. What examples? For instance, our calendars are now becoming Gregorian. So nagiging uniform na siya. Uni. From the term one, nagiging iisa na lang siya, no? So calendars around the world are now becoming Gregorian. During your ancient period, nangyari dyan is we have the Islamic calendar, or from every civilizations we have different calendars. The Philippines has their own calendar, the Hindus, but right now ang sinusundan ngayon natin is the Gregorian calendar. Uniformity, homo, nagiging isa na lang, standardization. Tobacco, for instance, di ba? Even the products, monopoly, for instance. When we hear about fast food, ang unang pumapasok sa utak natin ay McDo, tama, di ba? Or for instance, when it comes to dolls, pang babae, Barbie. Di ba? Nagiging one na lang eh. Nagiging iisa na lang. We are now becoming standard. Measurement, metric system. Although the United States still follows the English system, or even United Kingdom, they are still on the Stone Age period, di ba? Or for instance, our language, the universal language is English, di ba? So nagiging homogeneous na siya eh. Kasi yun yung binibigay ng globalization. Then lastly is we have Westernization. Now, the critic when it comes to globalization is that we have now the Western countries or the Western part of the world who will now determine the norms of the globe, of the world rather. So yun yung nagiging notion natin about Westernization. Everything is westernized from our culture, di ba? Our culture is now pop, hip-hop, what else? Or rather music genre, di ba? Pop, R&B, hip-hop, nagiging western na siya. Although nagiging critic na din later in Westernization, lumalabas dyan, medyo nagiging multicultural na tayo. Nagkakaroon ngayon ng conflict between K-pop, for instance, when we talk about genres, no? So Westernization, for instance, our model when it comes to education, it would always be the United States. Technology, United States. However, Westernization right now is being challenged by multiculturalism. So another thing, I forgot, another thing that we might include to the features is what we call now as cultural heterogeneity. That globalization might provide a heterogeneous world. But that is another lesson, no? So here are the references. Basically, this is under Steger, no? When we talk about the following features. So we have the following features, again, internationalization, connect, liberalization, open, borderless communities or states, universalization, we will now refer this to homogeneity, standardization, and westernization, the norms are being determined by your Western countries. So here are the following features. So thank you guys.